October 1929. Your grandfather walks into his bank to check on his savings. The teller won't look him in the eye. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're closing our doors." Just like that, 20 years of careful saving vanishes. The house he bought last year, the one he's been making payments on, that's gone too, because he can't make the next mortgage payment. By Christmas, he's standing on a street corner selling apples for 5 cents each, trying to scrape together enough money to feed his kids. This wasn't a rare story. This was millions of stories, all happening at once, all across America. The Great Depression remains the worst economic disaster in American history. Between 1929 and 1933, the stock market lost nearly 90% of its value. 9,000 banks failed. 1 in 4 workers lost their jobs. Families that had been middle class for generations found themselves in breadlines, wondering how they got there and, more importantly, how they'd eat tomorrow. I'm Malcolm, and this is History Meets Economics. Now is the best time to subscribe. So here's what really happened. A series of choices that seemed perfectly reasonable at the time fed into each other and created a machine designed to destroy wealth on a scale nobody had ever seen before. Let's get into it. 1923. World War I is over. America is the only major industrial power that didn't spend 4 years getting bombed and shelled. Europe's cities are rubble. Their factories are destroyed. Their young men are dead. America's cities are intact. Our factories are humming because we're producing everything Europe needs to rebuild. Our workforce is healthy because we didn't lose a generation of young men in the trenches. We've become the world's banker, the world's manufacturer, the world's breadbasket. Money is pouring in from everywhere. The economy is growing. Jobs are plentiful. And American businesses discover something that will change everything: consumer credit. Before the 1920s, buying something worked a specific way. You saved money until you had enough, then you bought the thing. Simple, slow, limited. If you wanted a new refrigerator but only had $50, you waited until you had the full $150 that the refrigerator cost. Then someone figures out, what if people could buy that refrigerator now and pay for it over time? Small monthly payments instead of one big sum. The customer gets the refrigerator immediately. The company gets the sale immediately. Everyone wins. The idea spreads like wildfire. By the mid-1920s, you can buy almost anything on installment plans. Furniture, cars, radios, vacuum cleaners, washing machines. All of it available for a small down payment and monthly installments stretching into the future. This seems great. It is great for a while. Families get access to products that make their lives easier and better. Businesses sell more products. The economy grows faster. More sales mean more jobs, mean more people with money to buy more things. But there's a hidden assumption built into the entire system. Everyone will keep their jobs. Everyone will keep earning the same amount of money or more. Nobody will face an unexpected crisis that makes them unable to pay. The economy is now built on a foundation of future promises. Promises that people will earn money they haven't earned yet to pay for things they've already bought. Banks, watching consumer credit generate profits, start getting creative with their own lending. They look at the stock market, which has been climbing steadily for years, and they have an idea. What if we lend people money to buy stocks? This is how margin loans work. You walk into a brokerage with $100 in cash. The broker says, "I'll lend you $900 so you can buy $1,000 worth of stock. You put up 10%, we provide the rest." You buy the stock. If it goes up 10%, you've just made $100 on your $100 investment. You've doubled your money. If it goes up 20%, you've tripled your money. The returns are incredible. There's a catch, obviously. If the stock goes down 10%, you've lost everything. Your entire $100 is gone. If it goes down more than 10%, you owe the broker money. But here's the thing. Everyone believes in 1928 and 1929. Stocks don't go down. Not really. Not for long. The American economy is strong. American businesses are profitable. Stock prices reflect real value, and that value only increases over time. So margin lending becomes normal. By 1929, you can buy stocks with as little as 10% down at most brokerages. Some let you do it with 5% down. That's 20-to-1 leverage. A 5% move in the stock price means you either double your money or lose everything. The really interesting part is who's doing this. It's not just wealthy investors and financial professionals. It's everyone. School teachers are buying stocks on margin. Factory workers are buying stocks on margin. Your dentist has stock tips. The guy who shines shoes at the train station is explaining why Radio Corporation of America is going to keep climbing forever. When the person cleaning your office is giving investment advice, that should probably tell you something about where we are in the cycle. Then there are investment trusts. These are the predecessors to modern mutual funds, except without any of the regulations or oversight. Here's how they work. A company forms an investment trust and sells shares to the public. They take that money and invest it in stocks. Sounds reasonable. Except many investment trusts don't invest in regular stocks, they invest in other investment trusts, which have raised money by selling shares. To invest in other investment trusts, which have raised money by selling shares, it's a pyramid of paper. Value built on value built on value, with no actual productive assets at the bottom, just more shares of other trusts. Goldman Sachs Trading Corporation launches in December 1928. Shares sell for $104. By February 1929, they hit $226. People who bought in December have more than doubled their money in 2 months. By late 1929, after everything collapses, those same shares are worth $1.75. 99% of the value just evaporates. But in early 1929, nobody's worried. The economy has achieved what economist Irving Fisher calls a permanently high plateau of prosperity. Stock prices reflect this new reality. America has figured out how to maintain permanent growth. The business cycle is dead. We've entered a new era. Fisher says this publicly in early October 1929, days before the crash. Meanwhile, underneath all the excitement and profit-taking, there's a problem developing. The actual economy, the one where people make and sell real products. That economy is slowing down. By 1927, most Americans who can afford a car already own one. Same with radios. Same with most of the consumer products that drove growth earlier in the decade. The market is saturated. Production is starting to outpace demand. But stock prices keep climbing. Not because businesses are getting more profitable, because people are buying stocks with borrowed money to sell to other people who are buying stocks with borrowed money. It's not investment anymore. It's speculation. It's a game where everyone's trying to sell to someone else before the music stops. The problem is that nobody's paying attention to how many chairs are actually in the room. September 1929, Roger Babson, an economist and business statistician, gives a speech at a conference. He says, sooner or later a crash is coming, and it may be terrific. The market drops 3% that day. People call it the Babson break. But then the market recovers over the next few weeks because most investors decide Babson doesn't know what he's talking about. The fundamentals are sound. The economy is strong. Everything's fine. But something shifts in the air. The confident chatter on trading floors gets a little more nervous. The jokes about permanent prosperity sound a little more forced. People check their portfolios more often. Brokers start getting calls from clients asking if maybe, just maybe, they should take some profits. The smart money, the people who've been doing this for decades, they start quietly selling. Not all at once, not obviously, just trimming positions, taking chips off the table, getting liquid. Nobody wants to be the one who calls the top. Nobody wants to look like a coward who sold too early and missed the final run-up. But nobody wants to be the last one holding the bag either. October arrives. Things start feeling different. Picture this. You're a broker in New York. You've been telling your clients for months that this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Buy now, hold forever, retire rich. You believe it. You've put your own money in. Your wife's money. Your kid's college fund. October 18th. The market drops. Not a lot. Just enough to notice. You tell your clients it's nothing. A healthy correction. Time to buy more. October 19th. It drops harder. The phone starts ringing. Clients are nervous. You're nervous, but you can't show it. Stay calm, you tell them. This is just profit-taking. The fundamentals haven't changed. October 21st, even harder. The volume is picking up. More people are selling. The ticker tape is starting to run behind. You're watching prices that are 15 minutes old, trying to make decisions in real time. October 22nd. The trading volume hits record levels. Something is shifting. The ground is moving under your feet, and you can feel it, but you can't see it yet. October 23rd, the nightmare begins. Margin calls start going out. Remember those loans where you bought $1,000 of stock with $100 down? The brokers want their money back. Now, today. Here's the nightmare scenario. You bought stock on margin, the price drops. Suddenly, your $100 investment is only worth $90. But you still owe the broker $900. The broker calls you and says you need to add more cash to your account or we're selling your shares. You don't have more cash. So they sell. When they sell, the price drops more, which triggers more margin calls for other investors, who also have to sell, which drops the price more. It's a spiral. Once it starts, there's no easy way to stop it. October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday. The opening bell rings at the New York Stock Exchange and the selling begins immediately. It doesn't stop. 12.9 million shares change hands that day. The ticker tape machine, which prints out stock prices, can't keep up. It falls behind by hours. Traders are making decisions without knowing the current prices. They're operating blind, trying to guess what's happening, panic spreading like a virus through the exchange floor. Men who walked in that morning feeling wealthy are watching their net worth evaporate in real time. The noise is deafening. Everyone's shouting. Nobody can hear anything. The wealthy bankers who'd been lecturing everyone about the permanence of American prosperity are now watching their own fortunes disappear. Some of the stories from that day are probably exaggerated. The famous one about investors jumping out of windows, that likely didn't happen as much as people claimed. But the fact that everyone believed it tells you something about the atmosphere. Friday and Saturday are chaotic. The big banks get together on Sunday and agree to pool their resources to buy stocks and support the market. Monday opens and it works. Briefly, the market stabilizes. People start to think maybe the worst is over. Maybe the bankers have it under control. They don't. Tuesday morning, October 29th, 1929, you're that same broker. You didn't sleep last night. You've been on the phone with clients, with your boss, with other brokers trying to figure out what's happening. Your stomach is in knots. Your hands are shaking. The bell rings. The flood begins immediately. 16.4 million shares trade hands. The ticker tape is so far behind it becomes meaningless. Brokers are shouting orders they can't execute fast enough. Phone lines are jammed with people trying to reach their brokers. Western Union runs out of telegram forms because everyone's trying to send messages about their ruined financial situations. By the end of November, the stock market has fallen nearly 50% from its peak in September. $30 billion in market value has vanished. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to $500 billion in today's money. Gone in about 6 weeks. Now, here's where you might think, okay, that's bad for wealthy people who own stocks, but regular working people don't own stocks. How does this affect them? That question contains the seed of the real disaster, because it turns out a lot of institutions that regular people depended on had been gambling in the stock market too. Banks had been lending money for stock speculation. They'd also been buying stocks themselves. With depositors' money, insurance companies had invested in the market. Pension funds had invested in the market. Even some local governments had put their reserves into stocks. When the market crashed, all of those institutions discovered they had less money than they thought. Sometimes a lot less. Sometimes none at all. December 1930. The Bank of the United States collapses. Despite the name, it's a private commercial bank, not a government institution. But it's one of the largest banks in New York, with over 400,000 depositors. When it fails, every single one of those depositors loses their money. All of it. There's no insurance, no government guarantee. Your life savings were in that bank, now they're gone. The panic this creates spreads immediately. If the Bank of the United States can fail, any bank can fail. People start lining up at banks across the country, demanding to withdraw their savings. Here's the fundamental problem with banking. Banks don't keep all of your money sitting in a vault. They keep some of it, maybe 10 or 20%, and they lend out the rest. This works fine under normal circumstances because not everyone wants their money at the same time. But when everyone shows up at once, demanding cash, even a healthy bank doesn't have enough physical currency on hand. The bank has to start selling off its assets, often at terrible prices, to raise cash. If they can't raise enough cash fast enough, the bank fails. When one bank fails, people panic and rush to other banks, which causes those banks to fail, which causes more panic. It's a death spiral, and it spreads across the entire country. Between 1930 and 1933, over 9,000 banks fail. That's 1 out of every 3 banks in America, just gone. When a bank fails, something happens to the money supply. There are literally fewer dollars in circulation. People who had money in that bank no longer have money to spend. Businesses that had accounts at that bank can't make payroll or pay suppliers. The money supply contracts. And when the money supply contracts, you get deflation. Deflation is the most poisonous economic condition possible. Here's why. When prices are falling, people stop buying things. Why buy today when it'll be cheaper tomorrow? So they wait. Businesses see sales fall. They cut production. They lay off workers. Those workers now have no income. They definitely can't buy anything. Sales fall further. Businesses cut production more layoffs. The cycle feeds on itself. Everyone who has debt is drowning. Imagine you borrowed $1,000 last year to buy equipment for your farm. Now, because of deflation, that same $1,000 is worth 20% more in real terms. Your debt burden just increased 20% even though the number on the paper hasn't changed. Farmers who borrowed during the boom to buy tractors and expand their operations are getting crushed. Small business owners who took out loans are going bankrupt. Homeowners with mortgages are losing their houses. The Federal Reserve has the power to stop this. They can inject money into the system, they can lower interest rates, they can act as a lender of last resort to banks. They have all the tools they need to prevent the death spiral. They choose not to use them. Why? Because the people running the Federal Reserve believe in something called liquidationist theory. The idea is that the economy had built up excesses during the boom years. Those excesses need to be purged. A depression, while painful, serves a useful function. It liquidates bad investments. It forces inefficient businesses to close. It restores the economy to a healthy foundation. Let the system cleanse itself through pain. Don't interfere. Don't print money. Don't bail anyone out. Let the market work. Brilliant thinking. Really top-notch economics there. It's the equivalent of medieval doctors who thought bleeding sick people would cure them by removing bad humors from the body. Between 1929 and 1933, the money supply contracts by 31%. Prices fall by 25%. Wages fall even further. Unemployment reaches 25%. 1 in 4 Americans who wants to work cannot find a job. 1932. You wake up in your apartment in Chicago, or what used to be your apartment. You lost your job 8 months ago. You've been looking every day. There's nothing. The landlord evicted you last week. Now you're in a Hooverville. That's what people are calling these shanty towns, named mockingly after President Herbert Hoover. Collections of shelters built from scrap wood, cardboard, tar paper, anything people can find. Hoover keeps giving speeches about how prosperity is just around the corner, how the fundamentals of the economy are sound, how American spirit and self-reliance will see us through. You'd like to see him explain that to the 3-year-old sleeping next to you who cried herself to sleep last night because she was hungry. These aren't homeless drifters. These are families. People who had jobs and homes 3 years ago. Accountants, factory workers, teachers, small business owners, now living in shacks. Bread lines stretch for blocks. Men in worn suits still trying to maintain some dignity, standing for hours to get a bowl of soup and a piece of bread. Women with children trying to keep them fed on nothing. You recognize some of these people. They used to be your neighbors, your co-workers, the guy who sold you your car, the woman who taught your daughter. Schools report children fainting in class from hunger. Some kids stop coming entirely because they don't have shoes or warm clothes. Teachers, themselves often unpaid for months because cities can't make payroll, sometimes use their own money to feed students. The suicide rate climbs. Not just the famous Wall Street bankers. Farmers who lose the land their families worked for generations. Small business owners who built something for decades and watch it die. Men who can't find work and can't face their families. Marriage rates collapse. Why get married when you can't afford to support yourself, let alone a family? Birth rates drop. People stop having children because they can't feed the ones they already have. Then the environment turns against the already desperate population. 1930. The Great Plains start to die. What we'll come to call the Dust Bowl. Years of aggressive farming across Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico had stripped away the native grasses that held the soil in place. Farmers plowed up millions of acres to plant wheat during the boom times. Good prices, good rain, good profits. Plant more, plow deeper. When drought hits, the topsoil just blows away. Dust storms block out the sun, black blizzards that bury farmhouses and choke livestock. Static electricity from the blowing dust shocks people and kills car engines. People wear wet towels over their faces just to breathe. You can't see your hand in front of your face. Dust gets into everything. Your food, your water, your lungs. Millions of acres turn to desert. 3.5 million people abandon their farms and homes. They pack whatever they can carry into their cars and head west, looking for work. They arrive in California to find that there's no work there either. They find signs that say no jobs available and armed guards at the state border turning migrants away. The lucky ones find work picking fruit or vegetables for wages that don't cover the cost of food. The unlucky ones starve. President Hoover genuinely believes he's doing the right thing. He's not evil. He's not stupid. He's a brilliant engineer who organized massive relief efforts during World War I that saved millions of Europeans from starvation. He understands suffering. He wants to help. But he believes, deeply and sincerely, that direct federal relief to unemployed workers would damage the American character, that it would create dependency, that it would undermine the self-reliance and rugged individualism that made America great. He believes that private charity and local governments should handle relief. That's how America has always done it. The problem is that private charity and local governments have run out of money. Cities are bankrupt, states are bankrupt, private charities are overwhelmed. There's no more help to give. He launches public works projects. The Hoover Dam employs thousands of workers. He encourages businesses to maintain wages and employment. He establishes the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to lend money to banks and businesses. He's trying. He really is. But it's not enough. and he can't bring himself to cross the line into direct federal relief. It goes against everything he believes about how America should work. Summer 1932, 20,000 World War I veterans march on Washington. They're asking for early payment of bonuses that Congress had promised them for 1945. They're desperate. Many of them are unemployed. Their families are starving. They're not asking for charity. They're asking for money they earned, just paid early. They set up camp in abandoned buildings and vacant lots. They wait peacefully for Congress to act. Congress votes no. The veterans stay. They have nowhere else to go. Hoover orders the Army to clear them out. General Douglas MacArthur, with Major George Patton and Major Dwight Eisenhower under his command, leads troops with tanks and tear gas against American war veterans and their families. Tents burn. People flee. Children are caught in the tear gas. The nation watches newsreel footage of the Army attacking veterans who fought for America just 14 years earlier. The political system starts to fracture. Communist Party membership surges, not because Americans suddenly love communism, but because capitalism appears to have failed completely. Socialist parties gain ground. Huey Long in Louisiana builds a following with his Share Our Wealth program. Father Coughlin reaches millions with radio broadcasts that mix economic populism with increasingly fascist-sounding rhetoric. People start asking hard questions. The American experiment, the idea that ordinary people can govern themselves through democracy and build prosperity through free markets, is that experiment failing? Do we need a strong man, someone who'll just fix things regardless of constitutional niceties? Maybe what we need is a dictator like they have in Italy, like they're getting in Germany. November 1932, Election Day. Hoover loses in a landslide. Franklin Roosevelt wins 42 states. The people have spoken. We need something different. We need it now. March 4th, 1933. Franklin Roosevelt takes the oath of office. The banking system is hours away from complete collapse. Unemployment stands at 25%. Industrial production has fallen by half since 1929. The country is 3 months, maybe less, from total systemic failure. His inaugural address includes the famous line, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Nice words. But what matters is what happens next. Day 1, Roosevelt declares a bank holiday. Every bank in America closes for 4 days. Federal regulators audit the books. Only solvent banks get permission to reopen. The immediate panic stops. Not because the underlying problems are solved, but because someone in charge is finally taking decisive action. Then begins the alphabet soup of new agencies and programs. CCC, WPA, TVA, FDIC, SEC, SSA. The Civilian Conservation Corps puts 3 million young men to work planting trees, building trails, fighting fires, constructing parks. They live in camps, earn $1 a day, send most of it home to their families. It gets unemployed young men out of cities where they're desperate and angry. It builds infrastructure that still exists today. The Works Progress Administration employs 8.5 million people building roads, bridges, schools, airports, dams. The infrastructure projects are important, but what matters more immediately is the paychecks, regular income, the ability to buy food and pay rent again. The Tennessee Valley Authority builds massive dam projects across one of the poorest regions in America. It brings electricity to areas that have never had it. Towns that operated by candlelight suddenly have electric lights, refrigerators, radios. The Securities and Exchange Commission starts regulating Wall Street. No more margin loans with 5% down. No more investment trusts owning nothing. Actual rules, actual oversight. Actual penalties for fraud. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation creates deposit insurance. Your money in the bank is guaranteed up to $2,500. Bank runs become nearly impossible because people know their savings are protected even if the bank fails. Social Security creates old age insurance. The revolutionary idea that people who work their entire lives shouldn't have to die in poverty when they become too old to work. The New Deal doesn't actually end the Depression, though. Unemployment drops from 25% to around 14% by 1937. Progress. Real progress. People are working again. Families are eating again. Then it spikes back up to 19%. Why? Because Roosevelt gets nervous. The deficit is growing. The debt is piling up. Conservative voices are screaming that he's destroying America with all this government spending. He starts to worry that maybe they're right. Maybe he's gone too far. So he cuts back, reduces spending on relief programs, tries to balance the budget, and immediately the economy collapses again. Unemployment surges. The stock market crashes again. All the progress evaporates. The lesson is clear, but Roosevelt can't quite accept it yet. You can't stop spending until the economy is strong enough to stand on its own. Pull back too soon and you're right back where you started. What actually ends the Depression is World War II. December 1941, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. America enters the war. Suddenly, the government stops worrying about balanced budgets and starts spending enormous amounts of money. Factories that had been idle for a decade roar back to life, making tanks, planes, ships, ammunition, uniforms, everything a modern military needs. Unemployment disappears. Not to 14%, not to 5%. By 1943, there's a labor shortage. Women enter the workforce by the millions because there aren't enough men to fill all the jobs. The economic lesson is clear. Massive government spending can end a depression. But it took a world war to make politicians willing to do it. The Great Depression happened because three things went wrong at once: excessive debt accumulation, a collapse in confidence, and policymakers who made everything worse by either doing nothing or doing the wrong things. In 2008, we saw something similar: excessive debt in housing instead of stocks. A confidence collapse that froze credit markets. But this time, the Federal Reserve acted. They flooded the system with money. They bailed out failing banks. They prevented the deflationary death spiral. It worked. We got a severe recession instead of a depression. Unemployment hit 10%, which was terrible, but it wasn't 25%. The underlying patterns, though, those haven't changed. People still borrow too much when times are good. Asset prices still disconnect from fundamentals when everyone believes values can only go up. Confidence can still evaporate overnight. And the consequences of collapse still fall hardest on people who had nothing to do with creating the problem. The Great Depression teaches us that markets can behave irrationally for longer than seems possible, that confidence, once destroyed, takes years to rebuild, that deflation creates a trap that's nearly impossible to escape, and that when things start going wrong, they accelerate faster than anyone expects. In 1929, America went from broad prosperity to mass starvation in 4 years, one presidential term. That's how fast a modern economy can collapse when the right failures happen in the right sequence. The mechanisms matter, the details matter, and the warning signs matter. Because the next crisis won't look exactly like 1929, but the underlying causes will be familiar. Too much debt, too much confidence, and not enough people willing to acknowledge that the risks are real. I'm Malcolm, and this is History Meets Economics. If you think this analysis is wrong, explain where. If you think it's accurate, explain why. Here's another moment. History met economics.